October 27th, 1944, 2:47 p.m., Philippine Sea. American pilot Lieutenant Robert H. Nelson is returning from a combat mission. His fuel gauge is in the red. He's been flying for over 3 hours. His F6F Hellcat fighter is running on fumes. Through the haze, he spots an aircraft carrier. Thank God. He's about to run out of fuel. He radios the carrier requesting permission to land. The carrier responds, "Permission granted. Begin your approach." Nelson lines up his approach, drops his landing gear, deploys his tailhook. Everything by the book. He touches down perfectly. His tailhook catches the arresting wire. The plane jerks to a halt. He made it. He's safe. He opens his canopy, climbs out of his cockpit. And that's when he realizes something is very wrong. The deck crew rushing toward him aren't wearing American uniforms. The aircraft around him aren't American planes. The flag flying above isn't the Stars and Stripes. Lieutenant Nelson just landed his American fighter on a Japanese aircraft carrier. He's 200 miles behind enemy lines, surrounded by hundreds of enemy sailors. His plane is out of fuel. He has no way to escape. This is the story of the most shocking navigational error in World War II. And somehow, against all odds, Lieutenant Nelson survived to tell this impossible tale. Let me back up. How does a trained Navy pilot land on an enemy carrier by mistake? October 27th, 1944, the Battle of Leyte Gulf is raging, the largest naval battle in history. Hundreds of ships, dozens of aircraft carriers, complete chaos. Lieutenant Nelson is part of an airstrike from the USS Essex. His squadron attacks Japanese positions on Leyte Islands. The mission is successful, but his plane takes damage. Minor hits, nothing critical, but it's burning fuel faster than normal. On the return flight, his radio malfunctions. Static, interference. He can't communicate clearly with his carrier. Worse, visibility is terrible. Scattered clouds, haze from burning ships, smoke from previous battles. Nelson is navigating by dead reckoning, estimating his position based on time and speed. No GPS, no modern navigation, just a compass and his best guess. His fuel gauge drops into the red zone. He has maybe 10 minutes of fuel left. He needs to find his carrier now. Then he sees it. Through a gap in the clouds, an aircraft carrier, his salvation. But here's the thing. In 1944, American and Japanese carriers looked remarkably similar from the air. Same size, same general layout. In poor visibility, they're almost impossible to tell apart. Nelson doesn't hesitate. He can't. He's about to run out of fuel. If he doesn't land immediately, he'll ditch in the ocean. And ditching means drowning or capture. So he commits to the landing. Full throttle down, landing gear down, hook down. The carrier gives him the green light. He touches down, perfect landing. And realizes, too late, he just landed on the Zuikaku, one of Japan's most famous aircraft carriers. The moment Nelson opens his canopy, he knows. The deck crew isn't speaking English. They're speaking Japanese. The aircraft spotted around the deck aren't Hellcats. They're Zeros, A6M Zeros, enemy fighters. The carrier's island superstructure has Japanese markings. And about 50 Japanese sailors are staring at him in complete shock. For exactly 3 seconds, nobody moves. Nobody breathes. The Japanese sailors can't believe what they're seeing. An American fighter on their deck, the pilot just sitting there. Nelson can't believe it either. His mind is racing. How did this happen? Where is his carrier? How is he going to get out of this? Then the shock breaks. A Japanese officer starts shouting orders. Sailors rush toward the plane. Some have rifles, others have tools to secure the aircraft. Nelson's training kicks in. He reaches for his sidearm. A .38 caliber revolver, standard issue for Navy pilots. But then he stops. What's he going to do? Shoot his way through 50 armed sailors? through an entire carrier? He'd be dead in seconds. So he does the only thing he can. He raises his hands, surrenders. Japanese sailors drag him out of his cockpit, pin his arms behind his back. Someone punches him in the stomach hard. He doubles over. They're angry, confused. An American pilot just landed on their carrier. Is this sabotage? A suicide mission? A trick? An officer approaches, speaks some English, demands to know what Nelson is doing there. Nelson tries to explain. It was a mistake, navigational error, low fuel. He thought this was an American carrier. The officer doesn't believe him. Nobody believes him. It's too absurd, too impossible. They drag Nelson below decks, throw him in a storage room, lock the door. He's a prisoner now, on a Japanese carrier, in the middle of a battle, with zero chance of rescue. An hour later, they bring Nelson to the ship's intelligence officer. The intelligence officer speaks fluent English, educated in California before the war. Now he's interrogating an American pilot who accidentally landed on his carrier. He asks Nelson to explain everything, how this happened. Nelson tells the truth, because what else can he do? Lie? They'll execute him for lying. He explains the battle, the damaged plane, the fuel emergency, the poor visibility, the mistaken identity. The intelligence officer listens, takes notes, asks detailed questions. What was Nelson's target? What squadron? Which carrier did he launch from? How many American carriers are in the area? Nelson refuses to answer operational questions. Name, rank, serial number. That's it. That's all he's required to give under Geneva Convention. The intelligence officer smiles. The Geneva Convention doesn't apply to spies and saboteurs. Nelson's blood runs cold. They think he's a spy. I'm not a spy, Nelson insists. I'm a Navy pilot who made a navigational error. Check my plane. Check my logbook. Everything will confirm my story. They do check his plane. They examine his logbook, his maps, his equipment. And slowly, the intelligence officer realizes something incredible. Nelson is telling the truth. He really did accidentally land on a Japanese carrier. The intelligence officer actually laughs. He can't help it. It's so absurd, so impossible. An American pilot mistakes a Japanese carrier for his own and lands on it. Lieutenant Nelson, the intelligence officer says, you have just completed the most embarrassing mission in naval aviation history. But the laughter doesn't last, because the intelligence officer has a problem. What do you do with an American POW on a carrier in the middle of a battle?
Here's the situation. The Zuikaku is in the middle of the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the largest naval battle in history. They can't keep Nelson on the carrier. He's American. If the ship is hit, he could sabotage damage control. He's a security risk. They can't interrogate him properly. They're in combat. They don't have time. They can't execute him. He's a lawful combatant who surrendered. Even in 1944, that means something. And they can't just let him go. He's seen their carrier, their aircraft, their defenses. So what do? The captain makes a decision. Transfer Nelson to a destroyer. The destroyer will take him to the Philippines, where he can be properly held as a POW. It's the only logical solution. They bring Nelson back on deck. The battle is still raging. In the distance, ships are burning. Aircraft are dogfighting. Explosions light up the horizon. A destroyer pulls alongside the Zuikaku. Nelson is transferred across a rope line. He's now on the IJN Furutsuki. The destroyer's mission is simple. Get Nelson to Manila, turn him over to the army, let them deal with this embarrassing situation. But fate has other plans. Because the next morning, an American submarine spots the Furutsuki. USS Shark, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Edward N. Blakely. Shark has no idea there's an American POW on that destroyer. All they see is a Japanese warship, a target. Blakely orders torpedo tubes loaded, prepares to attack. Nelson, locked below decks on the destroyer, has no idea what's coming. An American submarine is about to sink a Japanese ship carrying an American prisoner. The ultimate friendly fire incident. October 28, 1944, 6:23 a.m. USS Shark fires 4 torpedoes at the Furutsuki. 2 miss, 1 fails to detonate, but the 4th hits the destroyer's stern. The explosion is massive. The destroyer's back end is blown apart. Water rushes in, the ship starts listing. Nelson, locked in a storage room below decks, feels the impact. The ship shudders, tilts. He hears screaming, running, panic. He realizes what happened. They've been torpedoed, and he's locked in a room on a sinking ship. He starts pounding on the door, shouting, he's going to drown down here. For several minutes, nothing. Just the sounds of the ship dying around him. Then, the door opens. A Japanese sailor. He doesn't speak English, but he gestures. Get out. Get to the deck. The sailor doesn't have to help Nelson. He's an enemy. But he does it anyway. Basic humanity in the middle of war. Nelson stumbles up to the deck. The ship is chaos. Sailors abandoning ship, lifeboats being lowered. The destroyer is going down fast. Nelson finds a life preserver, jumps into the water, swims away from the sinking ship. Around him, Japanese sailors are doing the same. All survivors now, enemy and prisoner, drowning together. The Furutsuki slips beneath the waves. 37 Japanese sailors go down with it. Nelson and about 80 Japanese survivors float in the ocean, waiting, hoping for rescue. 2 hours later, another Japanese destroyer arrives, starts picking up survivors. They pull Nelson out of the water. Again, he's a prisoner. Again, he's on a Japanese warship. This is getting ridiculous. Lieutenant Nelson spends the rest of the war as a POW in the Philippines. He's interrogated multiple times. Each interrogator hears his story and doesn't believe it. An American pilot who accidentally landed on a Japanese carrier? Impossible. But his story never changes, because it's true. When the war ends, Nelson is liberated by American forces. He returns home, files his after-action report. His commanders don't believe him either. They think he's making excuses for being captured. Maybe he defected. Maybe he's a coward. It takes months of investigation, cross-referencing Japanese records, interviewing other POWs who heard the story. Finally, the Navy confirms it. Lieutenant Robert H. Nelson really did accidentally land on a Japanese aircraft carrier. The story's classified, top secret. It's too embarrassing. If this gets out, it makes American navigation training look incompetent. For 30 years, nobody outside military intelligence knows this happened. Finally, in the 1970s, this story is declassified. Nelson is interviewed by military historians. He tells his impossible tale. People are amazed. How did he survive? How did he not get executed immediately? Nelson's answer is simple. Luck. And Japanese sailors who followed the laws of war, even when they didn't have to. The pilot who landed on the wrong carrier. The prisoner who survived his own site's torpedo. The man who had the most embarrassing day of World War II. And somehow lived to tell about it. Subscribe for more declassified World War II stories that sound impossible, but actually happened. Smash that like button if you can't believe this is a true story. Comment, could you have survived what Nelson went through? This is Archive of Witnesses, where we uncover the stories that sound too crazy to be true, but are.